Today, 1 year ago, the last U.S. military plane departed Afghanistan, ending America's longest war. The withdrawal was sudden, just like the surrender of the entire Afghan army to the Taliban. Now, in the chaotic weeks of early August, U.S. troop numbers had dwindled, and the Taliban, they were closing in. The U.S. military flew more than 100,000 people out of the country in what became the largest airlift in history. You may remember this is the last American soldier to leave Afghanistan, boarding a flight that carried military personnel as well as the U.S. ambassador. The Taliban quickly took over the airport after that plane took off. They paraded equipment that had been left behind by the Americans and their NATO allies. Much of that equipment, of course, had been destroyed to make sure that the Taliban would never use it. The events of 1 year ago, especially those horrific scenes at the Kabul airport, they still haunt many former U.S. military personnel. DW's Stefan Simons is in Seattle, Washington tonight. He brings us the story of two U.S. veterans who served in the Afghan war.
U.S. Army Ranger veteran Matthew Griffin doesn't need visual reminders of what transpired in August last year. The images of desperate Afghans at Kabul airport trying to flee their country as Taliban fighters took over are burned in his memory and carved into his conscience, he says.
That moment, it broke me. And I reached out to a couple friends, a local small business. They offered up a boardroom, which we set up a command center. And I had Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and a bunch of civilians come in, and we stood up a full-on command center.
Griff, as everybody calls him, his friends and comrades went into overdrive, trying to help bring as many Afghans out as possible. People they had worked with, fought with, bled for, cried and laughed with. Griff and many others are still upset about how the U.S. conducted their withdrawal from Afghanistan.
I don't know a service member that isn't upset about it. And it's not that we lost. I mean, I think everybody will say, hey, we won all the battles, but we lost the war. But I think it's more the lack of it. We just fell flat on our word. Our nation acted in a dishonorable way. And the generals and the senior staff officers and all the people in the White House, and they're the ones who made those decisions. And I don't know a service member that just doesn't absolutely abhor them, period.
Filled with frustration, Griff offers his perspective and a reality check.
You know, we have a lot of friends there who are hurting, who are suffering, and there's no way out for them. No one is coming. It's up to them. They're trapped. They need to figure out life moving forward. Whether they decide to run or whether they decide to stay or whether they decide to fight, it's their decision. There's nothing that the everyday citizen like you and I can do to support them anymore.
Still, Griff and others continue their efforts to help even now. They can't send money or goods into Afghanistan. They can't get anybody out anymore. But they can still help Afghans who made it into the U.S. Meet Jimmy Settle, a former Air Force pararescue man and friend of Griff. He manages the local Afghan Refugee Assistance Center. His mission now, helping Afghans to get a foothold in their new home, America.
That's what's in my heart. Yeah, I welcome them with open arms because my family, at some point in history, were immigrants here in the U.S. And it'd be hypocritical to deny them the same opportunities.
Jimmy and Griff are just two of thousands of U.S. veterans who served in Afghanistan who are still trying to support Afghans in any way possible, each in their own way.
Well, I'm joined now by Omar Samad. He was once the Afghan ambassador to France as well as Canada. He is now with the global affairs think tank, the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. Ambassador, it's good to have you with us. It has been a year since that traumatic and chaotic departure of U.S. and NATO forces from Afghanistan. The helpers, the Afghan helpers who were left behind, have they been forgotten by Washington?
I don't think that they have been forgotten. I think that the situation is such that they were not able to either leave, they didn't want to, or some were prevented for various reasons. I think that the policy has been to evacuate as many as possible, not just by the US, but many others as well, including Germany. And I think they did the best job under the circumstances. Because you look at Afghanistan, there are three ways of looking at it. You look at the last 20 years of the intervention, some people call it occupation. You look at the year that just passed, as you said, and look at what has happened to the Afghan people since then. What are the Taliban doing? What is the international community doing in reaction to all of that? And then you look at the microcosm of those 2 weeks where the focus was on so many people wanting to leave and the evacuation and how things may have gone wrong. And some people think that they did the best under the circumstances.
And what about what has happened in this past year? The international community does not recognize the Taliban as the official leadership and government of Afghanistan. As a result, you don't have foreign aid money going into the country. The UN now says that maybe as many as 6 million Afghans could go hungry every day. Are these sanctions, are they actually doing more harm than good?
If you ask Afghans, they're doing more harm than good. Afghanistan was a recipient of billions of dollars of money, most of which was wasted, unfortunately. A lot of it was put into pockets and they fled. Those people fled the country. I, as an Afghan, know for a fact, and many others do too. Those truths will come out one day. But since then, it's the Afghan population, 35 plus million people, who are paying the price for a dysfunctional government that fled the country, and an international community, especially our friends, those who served, as your report said, and wanted to see something better. Unfortunately, for a lot of different reasons, we couldn't fix Afghanistan. We thought that we could fix the country by imposing models that didn't work very well. So there are a lot of lessons to learn from that. But now we have to deal with the situation on hand. As you said, 6 million people facing famine, including 1 million children who may die within the next year. 24 million people who have no money. They are living under the line of poverty. And almost 30 million plus people who are worse off. It's because of the sanctions. It's because of the money that has been frozen. It's also because of the fact that the Taliban have been intransigent and not responding in kind to some of the issues that are at hand.